Okay, good morning everybody. We're going to get started with our first session of today, which is pacification case studies. And we have two speakers. We're going to start with Tamarin, and she's from the University of Kent, and she's going to discuss water commodification as conflict pacification, the case of Palestine and Israel. And then we're going to follow up with Tia Daphnis from the University of New Brunswick. And Tia is going to discuss the pacification logic of critical infrastructure resilience. So we'll try and stick to 15 minutes per speaker, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. Thank you.
Good morning. Quite a pleasure to open the day, if quite frightening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the invitation and for the organization and all the hard work. It's a great, sorry, I'll go slower. It's a great pleasure to be in this space here in this beautiful region. So I will begin describing some general area of my PhD research, which I'm presenting here today. Okay. And then I will go in a little bit further into the case study, which is Palestine-Israel. So I just kind of want to make a note in regards to the discussions that we're already been having. First of all, around pacification and policing. Some of the discussions that we had yesterday in the panel, I suppose in my research, I take up pacification, not in the sense of policing in kind of the strict sense. I'm looking at Israel and the occupation of Palestine. So I'm kind of bringing back, in a way, the pacification conversation to military and militarization. So that's kind of one intervention. The second is that I'm also, I'm researching from law school, and I research international law. And I'm bringing also this discussion kind of onto international law, so rather than a domestic sense. And the reason why I find this relevant is because international law as a system is set out to achieve peace and security. So with pacification, these two concepts that are key to international law are sitting at the heart of the discourse within it. So my research analyzes the kind of persistent issue of water wars. There's been a lot of alarmist scholarship, also in popular media and popular literature, warning that the next world war is going to be on a water conflict, around water conflicts. So this body of literature gave rise to opposing scholarship that proposed that water is a tool for cooperation, that we can come together in peace around issues of water, of transboundary water management. And one response to these debates of water war and water peace has been a term called virtual water. The idea with virtual water is that the water required for the production of, the process of production of goods, so the water embedded in the production of goods, is a way to import virtual water into an economy that is water stressed. So by importing virtual water through trade, essentially in water intensive crop, economies are able to overcome their water scarcity, and the literature argues, pacify the conflict over the shared water resources. So I'm engaging critically with these bodies of scholarship, and importantly, these bodies of scholarship have approached the issue as a matter of international security. And my research comes to investigate then how water is discursively conceptualized and regulated through law, and the implication that this has on the conflict over shared resources. And I found that this crisis-oriented, this water crisis future that we're hearing is intimately linked to the security paradigm. And it facilitates beautifully capital accumulation processes in which water, both in the kind of peace camps and in the conflict camps is regarded, and the war camps is regarded as an economic good. So I turned to political ecology scholarship, particularly also human geography, literature debating the commodification of nature, and particularly of commodification of water. And I'm trying to bring these scholarships together to stress the legal dimension of this process of water commodification. So I'm trying to problematize the legal framework, which is often evoked by scholars to overcome water crisis, whether it's invocations to apply international water law in the context of transboundary water law, to achieve equitable and peaceful resource sharing, or if it's kind of more a proper application of the rule of law to protect water rights, so opposing water being treated as a commodity with human right to water, for example. So this process of commodification I'm exploring as a function of law. And I focus on the agriculture sector in particular to kind of explore what I consider a manifestation, or one such manifestation of this commodification process through virtual water idea. And I should just maybe clarify that for me, commodification is understood as a process through which a commodity undergoes alienation, abstraction. They're kind of two subtly different processes, and then becomes exchangeable within a monetary system for profit. And this exchangeability means that it is rendered equal to other commodities, and it is traded through the medium of money and traded off against other commodities as it. So we see this very much in Israel and Palestine, and actually in the whole of the Jordan River sharing, whereby, for example, some kind of desalinated water in the northern regions is traded with Jordan at the Red Sea region at the bottom in the south. So water is all the same, whatever kind it is. So importantly for the research, this is, I understand it as linked to a legal property regime in which is defined who is excluded and who is included, who owns water in this case, as against to who is legally dispossessed of water. And the idea is that with property, we can also analyze the function of the state and the natural resources of the state as legal property owners of those resources. And here I'm kind of drawing on Niamh Ni Bhriain's work on international law and the notion of sovereignty being precisely the expression of private property of the state. So he's equating the state as a property owner, just like an individual would be, and how law regulates those property relations. And another key idea here, I guess, is that if you approach it this way, the idea of private sector and privatization, which we've been hearing some about, we can actually go beyond, because these processes often happen in the hands of the state, so they're linked, they're interlinked. So here to kind of abstract a little bit, I want to extrapolate these ideas with Marx on the Jewish question, where he talks about law. He shows that with law, man as a citizen receives his natural rights to equality, liberty, security, and property. So liberty is founded on the separation of men to men. It is the right of such separation, and the application of liberty is precisely the right of private property. And then you have formal equality under the law, which is how this right to liberty is regarded. And then importantly here for us, security is then the protection of these individual rights and of property rights. So internationally then, to come back to international law, state as a legal subject receives its natural rights to self-determination. This is our liberty. And the application of sovereignty being precisely the idea of private property, as I mentioned. Which is, after all, the kind of formal equality. Sovereignty is kind of being the formal equality of states under law. And with the idea, oh wow, okay. With the idea of security, then each state is protected its right. So the reason anti-security framework is important here is because it allows for a particular reading of this manifestation of security as the protection of property. Expressed as the bourgeois fetishism of security. And again, important here is that it brings together this state apparatus with capital, as we heard yesterday from Mark, in which this complicity between security and capital, in which the state and capital collide, to quote Mark. So I would suggest that water is precisely a sector of this kind in which we can explore these issues, particularly in light of the fact that around the world most water sector management happens as a kind of semi-private, semi-public enterprises, and they often come together. Precisely because water has been an unclassical kind of way of commodification. It's not as easily extracted, captured, put away, stored, and sent somewhere else. So it necessitated this really strong state intervention with capital. So again, to reiterate, this pacification is a form of securing the insecurities or securing the order of capital. So just to go a little bit perhaps on achieving kind of peace and security in the sense of water management. Within water management, security has been a hegemonic concept. It kind of permeates all sectors of life, state, industry, academic, and civil society. And it can be kind of understood as really the achievement of water security. That is the goal. Water security is the goal, and pacification is what kind of enables that, where we all have water security and we're all pacified. So I'll skip a little bit, but I apply this idea to the study of extreme, as I said, oppressive military and political forces such as the Israeli occupation of Palestine, in light of a virtual water flow from Israel to Palestine. So actually Israel is sending water into Palestine in this way of through the commodities, through crop commodities, for example. So this dispossession of water, I argue in the research in my doctoral, is not only a means of controlling water resources, but it's also intimately linked to land, labor, and food production. Inasmuch as, by dispossessing water, Israel, in the case of Palestine, has achieved a what Sarah Roy calls de-development policy. It's not underdevelopment, it's de-development. It's halted the development of Palestine. It's stripped Palestinians of farming by dispossessing water. And by doing that, it stripped Palestinians of their livelihoods, which meant that then land was freed up because farmers had no longer ability to farm the land, which then enabled cheap labor force with no rights at its disposal, its Israeli disposal, and then meant that food production was no longer enabled. So then a kind of a presentation of issues of security enables a kind of a second-degree commodification, in which essentially Israel is selling Palestinians their own water. And again, this is a form of pacification So it, on the one hand, secures the insecurities, at the same time as presents the solutions to facilitate capital. It's producing more water through desalination also, and selling that again, and therefore we don't have to fight. So the question that then emerges in the case of Palestine and Israel is, how does a pacified legal reality of control of water facilitate the accumulation both of environmental resources as well as capital accumulation? And I'll just end there. For example, to kind of go back again to the policing and militarization idea, is one telling example of this is, for example, just a few weeks after the occupation began, on 15th of August 1967, military order number 92 has appropriated all water resources in the occupied territories, making them the property of the state. Yeah, we could continue the discussion as we go along. Thank you for listening.